This is test 3 review, and I'm still subtracting fractions. I'm doing 17, 18, and 19. So 17 and 18 are the same fractions that numbers 15 and 16. But in 15, this is set up vertically, and in 16, this problem is set up horizontally. So they've switched the direction. And the reason they did that, they gave you the same problem but switching direction, is we have found as teachers that when students are given a problem horizontally, some students solve it differently than when they're given the problem vertically. So I'm going to give you an example of solving this problem horizontally. In the last video I did of this problem, I solved it vertically because you can switch it. But alright, so we're having to find a common denominator, of course, between 7 and 2, because you cannot subtract the enumerators until you have common denominators. So what we're finding is the least common multiple between 7 and 2. So you take the larger number 7 and you list its multiples, starting with the first one. And you say, does 2 go into 7? It does not. And you go to the next multiple. 7 times 2 is 14. Of course, 2 goes into 14. So does 7. So that becomes our common multiple. To solve this horizontally, then, that's our subtraction sign. What we're doing, we're going to multiply 7 times 2, so we make the denominator of 14, which forces us to multiply 5 times the 2, the numerator times the same number, because you can only multiply a numerator and denominator by the same number to create an equivalent fraction. So in order to make this denominator 14, we have to multiply 2 by 7, which means we multiply the numerator by 7. So now we have new fractions to put in over here. 5 times 2 is 10, that's 10. 7 times 2 is 14. So regardless of whether a problem is set up horizontally or vertically, you have to find a common denominator in order to subtract or add. 7 times 1 is 7. 2 times 7 is 14. So now we can subtract across this way. 7 minus 10 is 3. And this answer is 3/14 for number 17. And then when you solve vertically, you're still having to find a common denominator between 9 and 12, which you take the larger number and start listing the larger number's multiples, because you're finding a least common multiple. So you start with 12. 12 times 1 is 12. And you say, does 9 go into 12? No, it doesn't. So you have to go to the next multiple of 12, which is 12 times 2 is 24. Then you say, does 9 go into 24? It does not. So you keep going to the next multiple of 12, which is 36. And you say, does 9 go into 36? Yes, it does. 9 goes into 36 4 times. So 36 is the common multiple and the least common multiple between 9 and 12. So in order to make 9 the number 36, we multiply by 4, which forces us to multiply the numerator by the same number to make the equivalent fraction. 12 has to be multiplied by 3 to get 36, so then you have to multiply the numerator by the same number 3 to get the equivalent fraction. So then 7/9 becomes 28 36, and 3 times 1 is 3, 12 times 3 is 36. So the equivalent fraction to 1/12 is 3/36, and the equivalent fraction to 7/9 is 28/36. And make sure that we bring our subtraction sign over, and then we do 28 minus 3, which is 25. And we sorted out in the last time I solved this problem that 25/36 is in fact reduced. So the answer to this problem is 25/36. And you can run through your divisibility rules to check that out. 2 plus 5 is 7. So 25 is not divisible by 3. 36 is, but 25 is not. 25 is not divisible by 2, but 36 is. 25 is not divisible by 4. 36 is. 25 is divisible by 5, but 36 is not. 25 is not divisible by 6. 36 is. 25 and 36 are not divisible by 7. 25 and 36 are not divisible by 8. 25 is not divisible by 9. 36 is. So that's how we realize that this is reduced. So now we're looking at this problem here. It's horizontal. Regardless of whether it's horizontal or vertical, you still have to find a common denominator. So we look at the larger number 16 and start listing the multiples. I'm going to work this problem horizontally. So 16 times 1 is 16. And we ask ourselves, does 12 go into 16? No. 16 times 2 is 32. And we say, does 12 go into 32? No, because 12 times 3 is 36. Now we have to go to the next one, 16 times 3, which is 48. Does 12 go into 48? Yes. 12 times 4 is 48. So 48 is a common multiple between 16 and 12, between 16 and 12, and it is the least common multiple. So we're having to make our denominator 48. So 12 times 4, and that means we multiply the numerator times 4, and we multiply 16 times 3 to get 48 there. So we have to multiply the top by the same number, number 3. So that changes this fraction to 7 times 4 is 28, and changes 12 times 4 to 48. So the equivalent fraction to 7/12 is 28/48. Remember that we're subtracting, and now we're going to change this fraction 1/16 to 1 times 3, which is 3. 16 times 3, which is 48. So 3/48 is an equivalent fraction to 1/16. Now we can subtract. 28 minus 3 is 25, and we have a denominator of 48. Wow, this looks very similar. So once again, we're in a similar situation as to this problem here. 25 is not divisible by 2, 48 is. 25 is not divisible by 3, 48 is. 25 is not divisible by 3, 4. So we're running into the same problem. This is reduced. So the answer to number 19 is 25/48.